I never thought I'd share lunch with someone from another world.
Maybe we're not so different after all.
Best meal I've had in the galaxy.
Then let's make it a tradition.
There exists families so powerful that governments answer to them. So wealthy that their fortune exceeds entire nations. So secretive that most people don't even know they exist. For decades, this bloodline has shaped world events from the shadows. They control industries, influence politics, and manipulate markets without anyone noticing. But here's what makes their story even stranger. In a distant future, when humanity finally encounters alien life, one human pilot discovers something shocking. The same patterns of hidden power exist among the stars. A young alien girl, shunned by her own family empire, decides to reveal everything. She shares a forbidden meal with this human. And through that simple act of connection, the truth about power itself begins to unravel. What you're about to learn will change how you see wealth, family, and control forever. Let me show you exactly how this incredible story unfolds. The spaceship hummed with the sound of 1,000 conversations. It was a massive transit hub, the kind where countless species stopped to rest and refuel. Commander Hayes had been traveling through space for 15 years, but nothing prepared him for what he was about to witness. He walked into the cafeteria, his military uniform still damp from the recycled air systems. The place was packed. Reptilian creatures sat next to humanoids. Bug-like beings chattered with tall, elegant aliens in the corner. It was a beautiful mess of different worlds trying to coexist. That's when he saw her. She sat alone at a metal table, her purple skin glowing softly under the harsh fluorescent lights. Her eyes were different from other aliens he'd met. They held something deeper, something older, something broken. Her name was Lyra. She was young, maybe 18 in human years, but her face carried the weight of centuries. Her purple skin was marked with strange golden patterns that seemed to shift when she moved. She wore simple gray clothing, nothing fancy, nothing that suggested power or status. But there was something about her that made everyone else in the cafeteria nervous. Hayes noticed how other aliens would glance at her, then quickly look away. Nobody sat near her. Nobody spoke to her. It was like she was invisible, even though she was the most visible being in the room. Hayes was a simple man. He didn't overthink things. He saw someone alone, and something inside him said that wasn't right. So he grabbed his food tray and walked over to her table. Lyra's eyes widened. The golden patterns on her skin brightened. For a moment, Hayes thought she might run away. Instead, she just stared at him. "Mind if I sit?" Hayes asked, his voice calm and gentle. Lyra didn't answer. She just nodded slowly. Hayes sat down and took a bite of his sandwich. It was terrible, like most spaceship food. He didn't care. He was thinking about the girl across from him. "I'm Hayes," he said, extending his hand. Lyra looked at his hand like she'd never seen one before. Then she reached out and shook it. Her skin was warm, warmer than a human's. "Lyra," she whispered. Her voice was soft, barely audible over the noise of the cafeteria. They sat in silence for a long time. Hayes ate his food. Lyra picked at hers, moving it around her tray without actually eating anything. Finally, Hayes decided to ask the question everyone else was too afraid to ask. "Why is everyone avoiding you?" Lyra's entire body went rigid. The golden patterns on her skin flashed bright red. Around the cafeteria, several aliens suddenly looked up, alert and tense. But Lyra took a deep breath. The patterns returned to gold. She looked at Hayes with those ancient eyes, and something shifted inside her. "Because I'm from the family," she said quietly. Hayes didn't understand. There were thousands of families in the galaxy. Why would one family make everyone so nervous? "Which family?" he asked. Lyra looked around the cafeteria. Everyone was pretending not to listen, but Hayes could feel their attention focused on their table like a physical force. "The family that controls everything," Lyra said. "The one nobody talks about. The one that decides which planets thrive and which ones fall. The one that decides which species get resources and which ones are left to suffer." Hayes felt something cold run down his spine. "Your family does that?" "My family built that system," Lyra said. "My ancestors, thousands of years ago, decided that some beings were more valuable than others. They created a structure of power and wealth so complex that nobody could ever break it. Not even if they tried." She paused, and Hayes saw tears forming in her eyes. "And the worst part, most beings in the galaxy don't even know my family exists. They think the universe is chaos. They don't realize that every bad thing that happens to them was decided by people like me. In rooms like ivory towers, without anyone knowing." Hayes set down his sandwich. He suddenly wasn't hungry anymore. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. Lyra looked directly into his eyes. "Because I'm tired of being invisible. And because you sat down with me when everyone else was too afraid. And because I think it's time the truth came out." The cafeteria suddenly felt smaller. Hayes leaned back in his chair, trying to process what Lyra had just told him. In all his years traveling through space, meeting aliens from countless worlds, he'd never heard anyone speak about a family that controlled everything. "How is that possible?" Hayes asked. "With so many different species, so many different governments, how could one family control everything?" Lyra smiled sadly. It was the first time Hayes had seen her smile, and it looked like it hurt. "That's what everyone asks," she said. "And that's exactly why it works." She pulled out a small device from her pocket. It was sleek, made of materials Hayes didn't recognize. She tapped it, and a holographic display appeared above the table. Around the cafeteria, several aliens gasped and turned away. The hologram showed a vast network. Lines connected thousands of points across the galaxy. Some points were planets. Others were space stations. Many were trading posts and hidden locations that Hayes had never heard of. "These are all connected," Lyra explained, her finger tracing the lines. "Every connection represents an investment, a business deal, a secret agreement, a favor owed." "Your family owns all of this?" Hayes asked. "Not owns," Lyra corrected. "Controls. There's a difference. Most of these businesses are run by other people, other species. They think they're independent. They think they're making their own choices. But every major decision they make has already been decided by my family." She zoomed in on the hologram. Hayes could see the structure more clearly now. It was impossibly complex. Thousands upon thousands of individual pieces, all moving in perfect coordination. "How long has this been happening?" Hayes asked. "For 10,000 years, Lyra said. "My ancestor, Kethais, was a brilliant explorer. He traveled to the most advanced planets in the galaxy and studied how their governments and economies worked. He learned their secrets. Then he figured out how to connect them all." The hologram shifted, showing a figure at the center. An alien with features similar to Lyra's, but harder, more severe. Kethais realized something that most beings never figure out. Lyra continued. "Power isn't about being strong or loud or having the biggest army. Real power is about understanding how systems work, and then quietly changing those systems to favor you. Real power is invisible." Hayes watched as the hologram showed Kethais spreading across the galaxy, establishing connections, making deals, building his empire piece by piece. "So your family just took over?" Hayes asked. "Slowly," Lyra said. "Over centuries. Every generation added to the structure. Every generation made it more complex, more hidden, more impossible to break. By the time most beings realized what was happening, it was already too late." She turned off the hologram and put the device back in her pocket. Now, my family doesn't even have to do anything. The system runs itself. Species fight wars over resources that my family controls. Governments make decisions based on information my family provides. Entire civilizations rise and fall based on whether my family decides to help them or not. Hayes felt a strange mixture of fear and fascination. "Why hasn't anyone stopped you?" he asked. "Because nobody knows about us," Lyra said simply. "And the ones who do know, they're either part of the system or too afraid to speak up." She looked around the cafeteria, at all the aliens who were trying so hard to pretend they weren't listening. "Do you see these people? They've all heard rumors about my family. They've all felt the effects of our decisions on their lives. But they don't know who to blame. They don't know who to fight. And that's how we've stayed hidden for so long." Hayes realized he was holding his breath. He let it out slowly. "What about you?" he asked. "Why are you different?" Lyra was quiet for a long time. "Because I sat alone in this cafeteria," she finally said, "waiting for someone brave enough to sit with me. And you did. And I'm tired of being alone." Hayes wanted to ask more questions, but something in Lyra's expression told him to wait. She was gathering her courage, preparing to share something even deeper. Around them, the cafeteria had grown quieter. Hayes realized that most beings had left. Only a handful remained, and they were all watching Lyra with expressions ranging from fear to fascination. "You want to know the real cost of power?" Lyra asked, her voice even quieter than before. "It's not what you think." She stood up and walked to the window. Hayes followed her. Below them, the vast emptiness of space stretched out in all directions. Stars twinkled like distant promises. "When I was young," Lyra began, "my family told me I was special. I was born into the bloodline that controlled everything. That meant I would inherit power beyond imagination. I would have wealth, influence, and access to any resource I wanted." She pressed her hand against the glass. "But they also told me something else. They told me that this power came with a responsibility. That I could never form real relationships. That everyone I met would be trying to manipulate me or use me. That I could never trust anyone." Hayes understood now why Lyra sat alone. "So they made you isolate yourself?" he asked. "Not made," Lyra said. "Taught. There's a difference. They taught me that trust was weakness. That love was a liability. That the only beings I could ever rely on were my own family members." She turned to face Hayes. "And then they used that isolation against me. Every 5 years, my family would meet. We would sit together and make decisions that affected billions of lives. We would discuss which species would thrive and which would suffer. We would talk about our investments, our acquisitions, our plans for the next century." Lyra's voice cracked slightly. "And I realized something. Every major tragedy in the galaxy, every war, every famine, every disaster that killed millions of innocent beings, my family had decided whether to prevent it or allow it. Often, they allowed it, because letting disaster happen was more profitable than preventing it." Hayes felt anger rising in his chest. "And you just went along with it?" he asked, not unkindly. "For a long time, yes," Lyra admitted, "because I believed what they told me. I believed that this was how the universe worked. That power meant making impossible choices. That morality was a luxury only weak beings could afford." She sat back down at the table. "But about a year ago, something changed. My family voted on whether to prevent a plague from spreading to a small agricultural planet. The planet has 3 billion inhabitants. The plague would have killed 90% of them. My family had the technology to stop it. It would have cost maybe 1% of our monthly profits." "What did they vote?" Hayes asked, though he already knew the answer. They voted to let it spread, Lyra said, because the agricultural planet belonged to one of our competitors. And losing those resources would hurt him more than it would hurt us to use the technology to help. Tears ran down Lyra's purple cheeks now. 3 billion people died. 3 billion. And I sat in that room and did nothing. I had the knowledge to stop it, and I was trained my entire life to value power over life. So I participated in genocide, without even blinking. Hayes reached across the table and put his hand on Lyra's. "You're not responsible for what your family did," he said. "Yes, I am," Lyra said. "I had power, and I chose to use it badly. That makes me responsible. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm telling you this. That's why I'm risking everything." She looked at Hayes with those ancient eyes. "Because I realized something. Real power isn't about controlling systems or manipulating markets. Real power is the ability to choose your own path, even when everyone expects you to walk a different one. Real power is sitting alone in a cafeteria and choosing to trust a stranger because something inside you says it's the right thing to do." Hayes squeezed her hand gently. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "I'm going to expose my family," Lyra said simply. "I'm going to tell the galaxy who we are, what we've done, and how to break the systems we've built. And then I'm going to disappear, because my family will hunt me until the end of time." What Lyra didn't tell Hayes was that the process had already begun. Unknown to him, her small device had been broadcasting their entire conversation to encrypted channels across the galaxy. The information was spreading like wildfire through underground networks, reaching beings who had been waiting for proof that the hidden empire existed. Over the next few days, Lyra shared everything. She provided coordinates to secret facilities. She released the names of every being in her family and every important person they controlled. She detailed the systems they used to maintain power and the vulnerabilities that could be exploited. Hayes watched in amazement as the universe began to shift. Governments that had been puppets suddenly realized they could cut these strings. Businesses that had been secretly controlled began to operate independently. Species that had been disadvantaged for centuries started to see opportunities they didn't know existed. But the response from Lyra's family was swift and violent. They sent ships to every planet where Lyra's information was spreading. They attempted to shut down communication networks. They tried to discredit the information by spreading their own counter-narratives. And they made it clear that they were coming for Lyra. Hayes and Lyra had maybe a week before the family's forces reached the space station. They spent that time preparing. Hayes used his connections in the military to help Lyra get to a safe location. He arranged for her information to be backed up in multiple secure locations. But on the last day before they had to separate, something unexpected happened. A delegation arrived at the station. They represented a coalition of species that had united after learning the truth about Lyra's family. They came to offer Lyra something she had never expected: protection, and more than that, they came to offer her a role in building a new system. "We can't undo the past," their leader, a wise being named Krell, told Lyra. "But we can build a future where no single family has this kind of power, where decisions are made openly, transparently, and by representatives from all species. We need someone who understands how your family system works. We need you to help us build something better." Lyra looked at Hayes. He nodded slightly. "I'll help," Lyra said, "but only if it's transparent. Only if everyone knows what I'm doing and why. The last thing the galaxy needs is me secretly building another hidden empire." Over the following months, the revelation about Lyra's family changed everything. Not overnight, and not without resistance. Many beings in the galaxy still benefited from the old system and fought hard to maintain it. But the knowledge was out there now. And once knowledge is released, it can't be contained. Lyra's family tried to reassert control, but too many beings were watching them now. Their secret was their power, and that secret was gone forever. One by one, their operations were dismantled. Their hidden bases were exposed. Their influence began to fade. Some members of the family tried to escape. Others attempted to negotiate. A few even committed to helping rebuild the systems they had corrupted. But Lyra's father, the current leader of the family, disappeared. No one has found him to this day. Some say he went into hiding in a remote corner of the galaxy. Others believe he's still out there, plotting his family's return to power. Hayes asked Lyra about this once, months into the new order. "Aren't you worried he'll come back?" Hayes asked. Lyra smiled that sad smile again. "My father taught me that real power is invisible," she said. "But I've learned something he never understood. The most powerful force in the universe isn't control or wealth or hidden influence. It's the truth. And the truth can't stay hidden forever." 2 years had passed since Lyra's revelation changed the galaxy forever. The old systems of hidden control had been replaced with something new. Not perfect, but honest. Democratic councils made decisions about resource distribution. Species that had been oppressed for centuries finally had a voice. Young beings from thousands of different worlds gathered to discuss their future without fear of hidden family pulling strings behind the scenes. Hayes watched it all unfold from his position as a military liaison. He and Lyra had become close friends over those 2 years. They would meet in cafeterias and parks across different planets, always choosing public places, always transparent about their relationship. It was the opposite of everything Lyra's family had taught her about power. One day, they sat together on an observation deck overlooking a planet that had been saved by the new system. 3 billion beings lived on this world now, thriving under a government of their own choosing. It was the same planet that Lyra's family had let the plague spread 2 years before. The one where 3 billion had died. "I think about them sometimes," Lyra said, watching the planet rotate slowly below them. "The ones who died. I wonder what their names were. What dreams they had. What they could have accomplished if my family had chosen differently." "You can't undo the past," Hayes said gently. "But you change the future. That has to count for something." "Does it?" Lyra asked. "Is building a new system enough to atone for the old one?" Hayes didn't have an answer for that. He suspected no one did. But then Lyra did something unexpected. She announced that she was establishing a foundation. Using her knowledge of her family's hidden wealth, she tracked down resources that had been stolen from species across the galaxy. She recovered trillions in assets that had been secretly squirreled away in accounts across multiple worlds. Every single bit of it went back to the communities that had been harmed. Some of the money went to education. Some went to medical research. Some went to rebuilding planets that had been devastated by conflicts her family had allowed to happen. It didn't fix everything, but it helped. More importantly, it showed something powerful. It showed that even someone born into absolute power could choose a different path. That even someone who had benefited from an unjust system could work to dismantle it. Beings across the galaxy took notice. Young members of powerful families began to question whether they wanted to continue their family's legacy of control. Some left to build honest lives. Others stayed and worked to reform from within. Still others, like Lyra, became advocates for change. Years turned into decades. The galaxy slowly, painfully, began to heal. Lyra's father was never found. It became one of the great mysteries of the new era. Some said he had died. Others believed he was waiting in some hidden corner of the universe, watching, planning, waiting for the moment when the new order would crumble. But Hayes didn't think that mattered anymore, because Lyra had done something her father never could. She had created a system so transparent, so distributed, that even if someone tried to build a hidden empire, thousands of beings would be watching for it. On the anniversary of that day, when Hayes first sat down at Lyra's table in the cafeteria. They returned to that exact spot. The space station had changed in many ways, but that cafeteria remained almost the same. The table where they had first talked was still there. "Do you ever regret it?" Hayes asked as they sat down together. "Giving up all that power, all that wealth?" Lyra looked around the cafeteria. It was full now. Beings of all species sat together, talking, laughing, sharing meals. No one sat alone. No one was excluded. "Every day," Lyra said. And then she smiled, the first genuine smile Hayes had ever seen from her. "But not the way you mean. I regret the years I wasted isolating myself. I regret the times I chose power over people. I regret that it took so long for me to understand what real power actually is." "And what is it?" Hayes asked. Lyra reached across the table and took his hand. "It's this," she said. "It's connection. It's honesty. It's the ability to sit with someone in a crowded place and know they see the real you, not the power you represent. That's something my family never had, and it's something I wouldn't trade for all the hidden wealth in the galaxy." Outside the window, the universe continued its endless dance. Stars were born and died. Planets spun on their axes. Countless beings went about their lives, unaware of how close they had come to remaining forever controlled by a family they would never know. But in a small cafeteria on a space station, two friends sat together and made a silent promise. A promise that they would keep watching, keep learning, keep reminding the galaxy that real change doesn't come from power concentrated in hidden hands. It comes from ordinary beings making extraordinary choices. It comes from sitting down with someone who is alone and choosing connection over control. And that, in the end, is the most powerful story of all. But here's what most beings didn't realize. Lyra's father didn't disappear randomly. He chose to vanish because he recognized something his daughter had discovered before he could stop her. That in a universe of infinite beings, absolute control is impossible. Information wants to be free. Truth wants to be told. And eventually, someone brave enough will speak it. The greatest twist. His disappearance was his final lesson to Lyra. By vanishing, he proved that even he couldn't hide forever. That no system of control is perfect. That the hidden empire had always been vulnerable, waiting only for someone to believe it could be broken. Lyra learned her father's greatest secret wasn't how to maintain power. It was how to let it go. If this story opened your eyes to how systems of power actually work, watch our next video about the 5 hidden families that still control parts of our own world. Subscribe so you never miss the truth.